I think there's going to be so few people in this session that we can make it really, open and kind of freewheeling if we want.
Okay. Andrew Chapman.
I'm going to put a couple things in chat. One is that link you sent me with the CTC Ground webpage. And then the other is the survey. I'm not totally certain if people come in after a chat is made, if they can view the chat. So I'm going to ask someone who comes in the next 10 minutes if they can see the chat that I laid down. And then also I had a test registration I did from my private email, and people do get reminded an hour before the meeting when they register for the event that the event's coming up. So people are being reminded automatically an hour before the session. You can see the presentation, right?
Yeah.
Right on.
Right on. I can. It says webinar on it.
Webinar.
Webinar. Yeah, I might do, kind of thinking about it. I might
Here
Friday
comes
or
John.
Saturday. Huh?
Here comes John.
Okay. I might do a nice bottle of Frank Family. Hey, John. Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Let me get some lighting going here.
You say you look like you're in a cave,
In a dungeon.
in a
Need to
dungeon.
get you a ring light. Yeah, better. I mean,
So,
for all
John, the
the
last 2 days have been phenomenal. So let's not drag this one, all right?
the challenge is made.
You guys have worked out the kinks with the recording and stuff. Casey, I thought you'd do this in Riverside, but I guess no, because, well, you can, right?
Riverside. No, what?
The tool Emily used that you told me to ask her about.
No, I did Teams.
So, John,
Look,
before I,
it's real quick,
yeah,
Casey.
Yep.
Do you mind just thumbing through the, or can I go through them myself? Oh, I can.
Yep, you should be able to. Let me know
Does
if you
that
want me to
change
forward.
everyone's?
What was that?
If I flip the slides, does that change
No.
everyone's?
Nope.
Oh, okay. This is cool.
Yeah, this is what, you and I kind of went over this. And I also, I don't think I made any updates really. And we noticed, it's really hard to get participation from the audience. So anything that we can do to get more audience participation, because they're not huge events, so they can stay unmuted if need be, unless there's some background noise problem.
right.
But we had like 20 people in the last couple of events, but they're just so quiet that, a few people chatted in questions, but
We're going to have Casey's, in tune with this topic, so we're going to have him provide some questions too. Obviously, I sent you some questions last week that I'm going to drive our conversation around. I'm going to, after Casey does the introduction and intros, I'll do a quick intro on REL, and then I'm going to ask you kind of your background. How'd you get started in this? And obviously, I'll bring in a little bit different. You obviously have spent your entire career in transportation. So we'll have some fun with it.
Okay. I think it should be a hoot. And you did get people to register.
yeah, 14.
Wow.
You didn't drive them all away, John.
And then we'll
Forget
push
that.
it out. So we've had a few people that have said, hey, I wasn't able to attend or join. Can you send it out? But we're going to plan on utilizing it and push it out. So. How's the weather down there?
Down here, it was cold and windy this morning, but we're supposed to get some spring-like weather next week.
Okay.
Did I just change this view or?
Nope.
No, that's me doing that. There we go.
Yep. I chatted before you got into the meeting, a couple links. Can you go into the chat and see if you were able to see those links, John, that I posted on the chat?
Chat.
Icon in the top middle chat icon.
I'm in the chat. I don't
Nothing
think I
there?
see. Maybe I
Okay.
don't get them because it wasn't.
Yeah, because you weren't in the session yet. That's what I wanted to make sure about. So I'll just repost those again once people come in.
Okay. I just chatted testing. Hopefully it showed up.
Yep. Looks like we got some folks coming in the meeting.
Dakota.
So I know we're scheduled to start in about a minute, but we're going to give everyone maybe 2 or 3 minutes, a little extra time to come on in before we begin. So,
Hey, Dakota, can you hear me?
yep.
Casey, you can take Firefly's note taker out if that's mine. Doesn't need to be in here.
I think rather than risk
Joe, you look
shutting down the
really
meeting, I'll
dark.
let it go.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe's backlit.
Not great.
Nobody really wants to see Joe anyway, so I don't know.
I don't think that statement is true.
I do. I do.
Colleen
But I
wanted
do low
to see me.
standards.
No, Colleen doesn't want to see me, but I think other people might still.
Tom wants to see me.
Yeah, my buddy Tom wants to see me.
Sometimes Fridays.
You know,
So another minute will begin. There are some people trickling in still. And for those of you that were in our past webinars this week, we're going to leave everyone unmuted. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it via chat, via phone, right? We don't want to listen to Tyler drone on all day, so please, we want to make this interactive as possible. So feel free to speak up. If there is some background noise, please mute yourself. Otherwise, feel free to chime in with a question at any time. We are allocating 10 minutes at the end of the meeting for questions, but since this group is fairly small and we want to make it interactive, yeah, ask those questions anytime, chat, Q&A, old school phone, whatever you need.
Oh, don't be taking my opening.
All right, we can begin. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Casey Edwinson. I'm the Digital Marketing Coordinator at REL. I'm joined by our host, Tyler Tatum, co-founder and COO of REL, and the guest speaker today is John Haldy, CEO of Haldy Technologies. As I was mentioning, just a few housekeeping items for this meeting. I will keep the phone lines open, but if you're not speaking, please mute yourself if there's any background noise. We want to make this an interactive session, so please feel free to ask a question during the session, either via your phone, via the chat icon, or the Q&A icon within the meeting. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And without any further ado, I'm going to have Tyler kick us off, and then we'll hit a couple of the bullet points in the introduction and then go through the meeting. Tyler.
All right. Well, Casey, thank you. And good morning, John, and good morning to everyone that's joining us today. This is our third episode of the week focused on technology. We've had the opportunity this week to talk about safety technology with a couple of our OEM partners. Yesterday, we had a fabulous conversation talking about maintenance and so many of the great innovative technology advancements we've seen there. And today will be business and back office. For those of you that don't know us, we're Rolling Equity Leasing. We're a premier nationwide leasing partner focused on providing services like maintenance, fuel, insurance, surrounded by our Max Equity Leasing. We also partner with industry leaders to support and drive safety first, and everything that we do and the equipment we provide. So today we are talking about business technology, and I think for myself, and I've been around 32 years roughly in the trucking side of the business. What did technology look like back then? I think about the 1990s to early 2000s. We had bag and car phones, right? We had beepers. You get into the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and that technology flipped to flip phones and Nextel. I love the Nextel two-way radios. And really the last 10 years have been around, new phone technology. Every 6 months, it seems like someone's coming out with a new phone, new technology, apps, laptops, and gosh, now as we're looking at our presentation, we're talking about AI and the advancement that brings. And John, you've been in the transportation business your entire life, right?
Well, if by that you mean I grew up in New York and I would hire cabs to go from one place to another as a kid when I had a few bucks, yeah, I've been doing transportation a long time.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this space and kind of initially just what have you found? What have you seen? And we'll talk about how it relates to going forward and being successful.
Sure. Well, my entire career has been in technology. I'm a software guy. I'm a computer nerd type. I was in second grade when I got my hands on the first computer I ever touched, and I've been playing with them and having fun with them since. And after college, I got into the medical vertical. That was the 90s, and then I moved into the whole .com bubble. If you're old enough to remember that craze as the internet exploded. And when that bubble burst, I found myself on Wall Street doing trading systems, high frequency trading systems. And around 2012, I got out of that space and was in Atlanta doing real estate. And a good friend of mine from college called me in 2015 and said, I've left investment banking and I've bought a line haul business. And I said, oh my God, Jim, that's cool. Congratulations. What the fuck is line haul? Pardon my French. And he said, I'm glad you asked. It's an amazing space, but we're in the Stone Ages. I need your help with your tech stuff. And he said, he bought me a ticket to fly up to Erie, Pennsylvania. And that's how I ended up in the middle of this FedEx line haul community, having a ball for the last 10 years. Good God, it's 10 years now. I built stuff for him. Never thought anybody else would ever want to use it. Truthfully, he thought everybody was keeping their cards close to the vest and wouldn't share what they use. So he felt he had to build it. And 5 years later, another TSP saw what he had built and said, what's that? And that started me on the Haldy tech journey because I didn't even think there was something there. So that's my tech background. So have I ever owned a truck? No. Have I ever driven a truck? No. So if you got trucking questions, I'm not the guy. But if you want to talk about computers and software and general tech, I know a little bit. I certainly got the scars to prove it.
No, that's fantastic. That's a great story, and it lines up really well with what we're going to talk about today. I am interested, over those 10 years, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned from an outsider, not necessarily running a line haul operation, but as an observer? What are the biggest lessons that surprised you, or just had that aha moment?
Well, having worked in medical in the 90s, medicine has always been, or at least back then, was a massive laggard in adopting technology. And things were changing so fast, and medicine said, well, that's not how we do it. I worked at a big academic medical center, Duke University Medical Center, one of the top 5. And they fought adoption of technology in every way because that's not the way they did it. And then one day it was forced on them because if they didn't adopt it, they were going to get eclipsed by everyone else. And it's funny, I see parallels today in transportation. There's lots of very successful trucking companies who don't want to use technology, but in the last 3 or 4 years, it's getting forced on them. And the folks who are adopting it, because I know a lot of the TSPs even, I can't speak about outside of the FedEx world because I don't know it very well, but within the FedEx world alone, the contractors who are leveraging it and taking advantage of it, they're the ones with the P&Ls and the margins that are outsized. They're the ones 50, 100, 120 trucks. They're the ones whose profit margins eclipse what everybody else is doing. And I see it happening in real time. The folks with 10, 20 trucks who don't want to embrace it, they're not going to be here playing in a few years. And AI is really accelerating that process.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, we're going to have a conversation today, and the one thing I'll promise you is I probably won't stay on track, and we'll probably jump all over the place and hopefully provide as much insight as we possibly can. The agenda that we have is kind of outlined in front of us: getting the tech basics right, remote and distributed teams, accounting and finance, TSP Management Systems. We may have some non-TSPs here, but it's all relatives. And then we'll open up with some questions. As Casey mentioned, we will open it up. We will also take questions throughout the presentation. So let's talk a little bit about, on the next slide, kind of setting up your business. And I think you've had the luxury, as we've gotten to know each other over the last 2 years, actually almost 2 years in Atlanta, April 20th, I remember that date, that you guys introduced freshman orientation. And freshman orientation was about working with those that were interested or had just recently got into FedEx as a TSP. Talk about how technology and setting up an office or some of the fundamental things that were needed in order to be successful. And then we'll kind of progress that to, hey, you're 10 years in, you're 15 years in, then you retire. But you know, what do you need initially to be successful?
So, and apologies, because if folks really want to dive into the cool new stuff, I just need to spend 5 minutes on the basic building blocks. Because if you said you were going to go into trucking, step one, get a truck, right? So
Right.
this is, if you're going to be in business, step one, get these things. And it's amazing to me how many TSPs don't have these things. So I just wanted to mention them quickly. There are ultra low cost tools like Google Workspace or Microsoft Office that you can buy for your business for a few bucks a month kind of thing. It's ubiquitous. You have to have one of them. It provides you the spreadsheets, the documents, the cloud storage, the calendar, the email, all in one box. If you don't have something like that and you're using a personal Gmail account, you can't grow your business. You can't effectively hire another manager or something like that. So unequivocally have one of those for a business, right? Cloud storage. Some people go, what does cloud mean? It simply means you don't store it on the hard drive on your computer. You store it on a hard drive living at Amazon or Microsoft or Google or Dropbox or something like that. And we'll get to in a few minutes why that's important. But all of those tools we just talked about have that. Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, shared contacts. If you're working with a team, you ought to be able to share your contacts easily. It's a real sharp stick in the eye if you're out of pocket, you're sick, you're at your kid's thing, and there's a crisis, and someone else works with you, and they don't have the phone number of the person they need to call at FedEx, right? So that's like basic building blocks. A website. I don't know if FedEx requires a website presence, but certainly for recruiting, anybody you're hiring is going to want to see it. It's so easy. GoDaddy or any of these other things, for a few bucks a month, you can have a very basic website, literally in the time it takes you to drink a beer sitting at home one night. It's done. You never have to think about it again unless you change your phone number. Phone systems. If you're giving everyone your phone number in your company, every driver your phone number, you are absolutely doing it the hard way. And here's the news. They'll always call you. There are tools like Grasshopper, Ring Central, and other things, Google Voice even, that lets you get a company number and then say, when that rings, forward it to my cell phone. Oh, I'm out, forward it to my manager's cell phone. Oh, after 6 p.m., send it to my manager's cell phone. Those kinds of things, like really basic, right?
Right.
And there's even different ways that you can do blast texting and shared texting right from your computer. So like Google Voice, I get text messages on my phone. I can also get them right on my computer. Someone I work with can see those things. They can reply. I can see the replies. All of that just makes your life so much easier when you go from the one person who's the center of the spider web to adding people to your team. Because I know it's an interrupt driven business, but if you don't set up the basics like that, and I'm happy to, anybody who's on call or watches this, give me a shout. I'll give you a tutorial if this doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
that's like the basics. It's like having some trucks if you're going to be in trucking.
Yeah. Now, John, wait a minute. You said Amazon. Now, Amazon's a competitor, right? So is there any risk with utilizing their service that I have to think about?
No, they are so big. If you
Okay.
use Amazon Cloud, I
Oh.
assure you that nobody in the Amazon Cloud department talks to anybody in the Amazon delivery service. Not a chance. It's just too big for them. But Amazon's the one that the nerds like me go to because it's not sort of ready for consumer use. So really, it's Google or Microsoft.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. So you talked a little bit about teams, which is on the next slide. As you think about, your team and building your team, whether it's remote or in one office, obviously things have changed in the last 5 years. Talk a little bit about not only the things that you kind of need or you need to think about in preparation, but also how has technology changed both the hiring, the skill set, and kind of the daily support that you need?
Well, I think that technology, just these basic tools, they set the bar higher in terms of fluency with computers, but the good news is the bar is really, really low. And
Mhm.
if you're like me, I'm 55 years old. I happen to be a nerd, but I have plenty of peers who are doctors, lawyers. They're hesitant to adopt technology, but there isn't a 25-year-old or a 30 or a 35-year-old who doesn't just take to this like we walk and breathe every day. But you do have to think about the fact that if you're hesitant, by putting these tools in place, if you've got a team, assuming they're younger than you, you're going to learn from them and it's going to get really easy. But most owners I know who don't like technology, it's because they are 55 and they haven't grown up with it. They weren't a nerd like me. I mean, if you're a trucking company owner, odds are you're not a nerd.
Right.
And so you just got to realize that they've made it really easy. I won't name names, but there's a customer of mine on the software side. He's got like 40 trucks. He's the most wonderful human being on the world. He started our first conversation with, I just want you to know, I hate computers and I ain't going to use it. And he said, but my wife's here. She's going to use it. Fast forward 3-4 weeks later, after she'd learned it, he called me and he started asking me questions about how to do something in the software. And I said, wait a minute, I thought you're not going to use it. And he goes, well, no, this is easy. I don't mind just looking at a screen and clicking the obvious button to get what I want. I just don't want to have to learn lots of new things. All of this has gotten that kind of easy. It's as easy as using your phone now. And if it's not, that's probably not the tool for you.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So have you seen much? So if I'm starting up a business and I want to grow that business, do I need to go out and hire a person for every single area of concern that I'm looking at? Have you recommended fractional services? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? How would you recommend that as you're growing your business?
That is absolutely the hard, expensive way to do it. What I'm talking about doing for the basic building blocks, you could hire a 16-year-old kid who's good with, find the nerd in the neighborhood and they'll set you up for about $300. I mean, it's
Oh,
that
wow.
easy.
Okay.
There are companies that will hold your hand, but the thing is, like a perfect example, my CPA, he's got a 40-person firm and they wanted to go cloud-based, remote, distributed, and they had to have everything perfect. And everyone on the team had to have someone who's on call 24/7 if something goes wrong. He went with someone, fractional IT, CIO type of person. They set it up, they paid more. But your typical TSP, if the average TSP has 10 trucks, they got 1 or 2 employees. You don't need any of that. You set up Google Workspace or Microsoft Teams, you're probably good to go. And if you've got 40 trucks and you've got 5 people, you still don't need all of that. All you need is like a $20 a month subscription per user for 5 people, and you're good to go. It's really that easy. So if people think the money is the objection, that's silly. That's absolutely silly.
So John, how do you think about you guys work with quite a few vendors? We got the Line Haul Summit that's coming up April 24th in Irving, and there's a lot of great vendors that show up at those events. And you may have back office accounting, you might have some telematic type customers that provide different services. What is your recommendation for whether it's the first time or the 5th time that you've attended one of these events, in the many experts that are there? What's the greatest value of getting the most out of that experience and conversation?
Wow, big question. I think that for most folks who go to the show, a huge piece of it is learning what they don't know. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? And so it's very easy to go to that show and say, wow, there's 50 vendors here, there's 80 vendors here. I know those 4, I'll talk to them. I think if you go to a show like that, yes, talk to those vendors, solidify the relationships, go straight up to the other vendors and say, hey, what do you do? What's the value prop? Why are you here? Why do people go to you? Because that's where you can catch your blind sides, right? And Pat and I, Pat McKay, CEO of REL, we go and we talk about fuel, and we get people coming up going, we didn't even know that was a thing. The IFTA game, the
Right.
Opus peg. You're going to see a vendor, you go, I never heard of them. Obviously, I don't care. Well, that's not the case, because there's a whole bunch of people who care and are paying them for their value. Maybe you should be clued into what they do. Now, if you've heard the vendor's asshole or the vendor does crap or something like that, sure, ignore them. But if you don't know what they do, absolutely step into it. That's for the vendors. But the other part of the magic is we've got 500-600 folks who are doing basically the same thing, but doing it in their own way. When you get in a coffee or you're sitting waiting for the presentation to start, or it's just broken, or you're in the break areas, that's when you should be going and talking to anybody you can, saying, hey, my name's John, and I've got 12 trucks in Alabama. What do you do? And see where the conversation goes. Because once again, yes, everybody has routes, everybody has trucks, everybody hires drivers, but how you do it is the special sauce. And it's amazing how people are willing to share there, because if you've got 10 trucks in Alabama and someone else has 20 trucks in Spokane, right? You're not a competitive threat to them. This is about improving your business. And I think everybody who attends comes from the same place, which is I'm going to share what I know. And it's what I think. And maybe they think it's nothing, but out of 10 people, 5 people didn't know that. And similarly, if they have 20 conversations, they're going to pick up a ton of stuff. So that's the value add. My favorite story was the guy who said, I don't go to these shows. I don't learn anything. I saw him as he arrived from the airport. He said, I was at the baggage claim. I bumped into somebody. We figured out we're going to the same place. We shared a car. I think he gave me a $38,000 tip on the way here. So I'll be back.
Yeah, I think probably the greatest lessons that we've heard is exactly those same stories, and it is about there's nothing better than benchmarking, and how powerful is it when you're able to benchmark with someone that's been through the same challenges or failures that maybe you're going through, and can share how they were able to get out of those situations and see the success that they're seeing now. And then just really hearing from kind of industry experts around recruiting, like Higher Impact, or safety, like Line Haul Central, and so many other telematic companies, about how to advance your business or utilize AI and stay ahead of the curve, and then really be able to extract that from your business, and at the end of the day bring profitability. So no, it's pretty powerful. So go ahead.
I know you meander. I want to get past this slide, because this is more basic building blocks, the one that we've got displayed, I think, right now, which is about remote and distributed teams.
Yeah.
Can I take 2 or 3 minutes and just explain to folks why these are so important, and then we're done with it?
Absolutely. No, go ahead.
So we talked about this cloud stuff, and I said I'd get to that. My computer, and I'm a nerd, I got a Windows computer. There's a My Documents folder. There's a big hard drive with 1 terabyte of things. I don't have a single file stored on my computer. If my computer dies, my computer gets stolen, we have a fire or a flood, I can go down to Costco or Best Buy, grab a computer, and I'm fully 100% back in business. I keep paper archives just in case, but everything is scanned and goes into the cloud so that I can be anywhere. If I lose power at home or at work, or I lose internet, I can take a laptop and I can go to a coffee shop, or I can go to a hotel, and my business keeps running without a hiccup. Every TSP should have that at its most simple form, right? Because we've all dealt with that. And you can't have trucks that are going out and people calling you and you don't have connectivity. So from a disaster recovery standpoint, simply using the cloud to put your files, big win, right? If you have trucks in Hagerstown and you live near Hagerstown and your manager's in Hagerstown, yeah, you can probably all go to an office. But what happens the moment you get given 5 routes in San Antonio, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to put a manager there, and everything's paper and on a local computer in your office, right? That whole Google Workspace, Microsoft Office thing I talked about, it's already solved it for you. Y'all are working on one big shared hard drive in the cloud, and you can put someone there and they have access to everything they need. The whole driver communications thing, you start using those tools, it becomes really easy to talk to drivers who are all over the country, right? And this is a totally another subset, but it's something I'm hoping to talk to people in Dallas about. I've been turned on to the fact that, and it's coming big time, not only is AI coming, but offshore talent. I've got 5 people on my team that are in the Philippines. I don't want to say here exactly what the cost level is, but it is a small fraction of what it takes to hire people here. All my accounting, all my finance, all my compliance stuff, all of that kind of back office stuff, because I have Google Workspace, which is the one I picked, I flipped a coin. Because of that, they're all just as good as sitting in the office next to me. They have US phone numbers. They work my hours. Like, setting up the technology lets you hire someone for $5 an hour with a college degree to do all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So again, yeah, technology costs a few bucks, but think about that. If your bookkeeping could be done overseas with full benefits for $10,000 a year, you just made all your money back by having the technology. So I just wanted to cover that because I really think it's an
No.
important point for the folks resisting this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as we transition to the next slide, accounting and finance, is everything you just said adaptable to someone that has 2 trucks versus 40 trucks?
Absolutely. In fact, the bigger you are, they're already taking advantage of this. They figured this out. We talked about, P&Ls and margins and whatnot. They're big enough to have figured it out because you can't run 40 trucks without doing this. You can't.
Right.
But you can run 5. But when you get given 5 more, you're going to go through this horrible growing pain to figure it out. If you set it up now, it's easy. There's
Yeah.
nothing to learn.
Yeah.
So it's applicable from 2 trucks to 200 trucks for sure.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about accounting and finance. And again, as you're setting up and the things that, Casey, you can move to the next slide.
Yeah, before we go to the next slide, I just want to let everyone know, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question. Also, I think I forgot to mention that we're running a survey during this session. So if you go to your chat, you should see a link for a Zoho survey that will be sharing the results after the session. So please, if you have a few minutes during the meeting today, fill out that survey. Otherwise, I will go to the next
Casey,
slide.
did you want me filling it out?
Sure. The more the merrier.
Well,
So, John, let's talk a little bit about accounting and finance and some of the recommendations that you've outlined here, and certainly the impact, again, it has business and everyday responsibility.
again, basic stuff. But I had remember the person I mentioned earlier who's a wonderful human being?
Yeah.
When I spoke to him at last year's Line Haul Summit, he said, "Do you think I need to do this?" I said, "You have 40 trucks. What are you doing now?" He said, "I just pile the receipts up and once a month I give them to my accountant."
Wow.
I was like, "No, please don't tell me you said that." I mean,
Yeah.
Zoho
Does
Books,
happen.
Zoho Books will do it. I was on QuickBooks forever, QuickBooks Online. It's all cloud-based. So my computer dies, I go to another computer, it's all there, right? My accountant can see everything in real time. My accountant can change things. There's no sending the QuickBooks file when you go online. I loved it. Intuit has gotten so damn big that they're acting like a big company. I'm very quickly moving away just because I'm very picky with technology, but QuickBooks works great. But really, it's like $30 a month to have all of your accounting system online. There's no reason not to use it. If you're still doing paper stuff, just scan it and send it to where you need to, but don't do it without an accounting system. There's a very sophisticated large contractor who came to me and said, "Everybody keeps telling me I need an accounting system. Is that true?" And I was like, so I have to assume there's a lot of folks with 4 and 5 trucks who aren't using one. You got to know what your business is doing. It's beyond, you can't run line haul and your basic operating principle is check your phone to see if there's money in the bank. It doesn't work well, right? You can't do that.
It's funny. Prior life to REL, I remember seeing examples of drivers, actually drivers, not contractors, and they would take out bags of receipts when they would have to submit their fuel, and have all of their receipts sitting in a bag, and then once a month they would just turn them in to the operations, and they would have to go on through and filter out every single receipt. And then we moved into a product that automated it and kept track of everything, and obviously made it seamless. So it's, when you talk about how people just pile stuff up and they pay for a receipt, that is real, and it's still happening today. And there's so much advanced technology that allows you to scan something or enter something or process a credit card, and it creates the reporting capabilities for you right there. So you're spot on.
Tyler, I won't bash FedEx, because FedEx is the golden goose that gives to this entire community, right? It's a great business. They don't do things in the most up-to-date way for certain cases. And lots of TSPs love to complain about the way FedEx does things, okay? TSPs have to give MMRs, monthly maintenance reports, to FedEx every month on paper or email, right? And they then take a big pile in every terminal, and somebody hand keys in all that crap, okay? Don't complain to me about FedEx when you're doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Don't emulate their big company, slow, archaic way of doing it. Be more nimble than them. Adopt technology quicker than them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about management systems and some of the examples that you have, and I'll probably tie in a question around this as you think about, because you have missing trips, you have fuel reimbursement, you have an analysis and fuel and drivers. Where has technology brought some of the biggest savings as you think about all of the different examples here that you've seen over the course of the last 10 years?
Okay, and this is kind of my wheelhouse, because that software that I told you I developed for my friend turned into this. When we started, I didn't know if there was really a need. I assumed everybody had something. And the thing about technology markets is, when it's very specific to a niche market, there's fewer customers, and many software companies don't want to build because they think, well, I can't make a living. And they're right. And that's why I wonder why I did what I did. But the more specific it gets, typically the more it costs. Like Google and Microsoft can sell to 1 billion people. It's going to be $5-10 a month. When you start building something where your overall market as a software company might be, 800 users, you've got to charge more per, right? But the more specific it gets, the better, the more things it can do for you, as opposed to just generally. And so that's why we are one of a number of companies. Evo Pro is one of them. My Ground Force is one of them. And there's others that you'll see at the show and you can learn about, that cater to the line haul TSPs. And we all kind of do the same thing. I'd like to think we do it better, but I'm sure there's customers who think that their tool does it better. So this is by no means a pitch for me. It's a pitch to use something if you're a TSP, because the blessing is, prior to 2020, there was nothing you could go get. Now you have choices and we have competition, and that benefits you, right? We started with the lowest hanging fruit, which was looking for mistakes in FedEx's paper-driven process that cost you money. Missing trips, where you sent a guy from Scranton to Orlando and they didn't dispatch it right, and you were left hanging on an $800 trip, right? So that was really easy to go after. Then we went and started looking at fuel reimbursement, where because of FedEx's rules, if the truck didn't go enough or you didn't fuel because it's a spare, you suddenly didn't get paid on fuel. So we started looking for those things. So this was literally like buying a piece of software that was an ATM for you, because it found all the things that you couldn't possibly find on that PDF. And we layered on analytics to look at miles driven by truck and fuel MPG and those kinds of things, right? All of these things, we just kept building features. We all did. And payroll, we discovered a treasure trove there, because a lot of people said, well, I can't begin to spend the time to calculate by the mile, so I'll just pay my guys by the hour. Well, that sets up a perverse incentive where they want to go slower because they get paid more, whereas you want them to put more miles on the truck and take more loads. So we found that by making it easy to do the payroll calculations of what you're going to pay the guys, and layering on incentive bonuses like, hey, I'm giving you a route with 2,200 miles, but I want you to go to the terminal manager and see if there's yard work or spot work you can pick up. They'd be like, well, you're paying me weekly. What do I care? Oh, right. I get 60 cents a mile for the 2,200, but if I find extra work, I get 75 cents a mile on that extra work. all of a sudden you found the folks on your team who would hustle, puts more money in your pocket, puts more money in their pocket. And then we more recently have been digging into total cost of ownership and repair costs and loan costs and understanding whether the ROI on that piece of equipment is good or if it's time to sell it and replace it or just sell it outright because you don't need the extra spare. So these are the kinds of business things that we're looking at to justify our existence. And when folks say, I don't need that, paper and pencil's just fine, I'm scratching my head because I'm like, regardless of the tool you use, you're talking about a few $1,000s a year. But because of our experience, we're like, we're going to find you $40,000 a year at your size. Why would you fight that?
Yeah, so we're talking a little bit about FedEx. How would you respond to someone that's maybe not running in FedEx? Let's just say maybe I'm working with Amazon or a small regional carrier or a local pickup and delivery operation. How does some of that align to those type of companies? Similar, different?
Well, I think that when you work for Amazon, which is a massive data company, and they've been data driven since the day Jeff Bezos founded it, you're going to find that they are ahead of the curve from a FedEx or a large carrier technology wise. And it's because it's in their DNA, but it's also because they're a new entrant. Whereas a FedEx, for example, they've got systems built 20 plus years ago. And once you have a big operation going on those systems, it's very, very hard to upgrade or replace them. It's kind of like replacing an engine on a plane without landing, right? The newer, smaller places might be more nimble, but I'd be very surprised because your traditional P&D or line haul carrier, it's not in their blood to do tech. So I know for a fact that Forward Air has a system they're developing for their contractors to help them. And they've looked at the systems in the TSP space. And they're like, oh my God, we just did version 1. You guys are way beyond our planned version 6, which is due out in 2032. Like, because they're too small to invest enough in it, right?
Right.
So again, it goes back to what I talked about. Transportation is a massive laggard in the adoption of this because it's fragmented. It's very different. If you haul for Forward Air, they have their systems you have to deal with. If you haul for Prime, if you haul for Schneider or someone else, they all have these antiquated TMSs and other things. It's very hard for a player like a Microsoft or Google to come in and say, let's write something for contractors. Because if they did, they'd have to write it 72 different ways. There's no standardization across those carriers. So you got to do what you can do within your own world and accept that the carrier you're working for is going to have their own system, but there's so much you can do for yourself.
Right. Well, John, you're a big data guy. Talk a little bit about data. How do you use it? How should you be using it if you're running a business? How do you use it and provide it to customers? And maybe what are some of the biggest surprises that you identify on a regular basis for clients?
Well, I think that data has been used in transportation since the day they first built a truck, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They were probably tracking the amount of gallons they put in and the amount of miles they did and the weight of the loads. There's always been data. But what's happening with the telematics, which allows lots of new data points to be collected, and what's happening in with the computers, the power of the computers and the distribution of it and the AI stuff, is we're able now to look at data points that didn't exist before. And if anyone's a baseball fan, I don't know if you know much about the history of baseball and statistics, but from the day they started, they were keeping score. They knew how many strikes there were, how many doubles and singles. Bill James was the guy who started doing the baseball almanac of data, and it spawned fantasy baseball.
Right.
And then if you watch Moneyball, you had the manager there, and it was always data, but they started looking at different things and realizing how they could win. Okay, and it's still going on today. And I think that that's happening in transportation. It's not just about miles. It's not just about gallons. It's about fuel efficiency, the ROI of additives. It's about aerodynamics. It's about weight load distribution. It's about gear ratios. It's about proper incentive pay. There's all kinds of different metrics. We're still looking for the ultimate total cost of ownership metric that we could generate across all the makes, models, and whatnot to be able to tell you definitively that the sweet spot for a 2022 Volvo 860 is to sell it when it hits this many miles or this many years, right? But the data is now there. Now we can start to do a lot of that analysis. With paper and pencil 10 years ago, forget it. So I think that you always have to be building, and you always have to be looking at the new things people are looking at and figuring out for your business, will it move the needle? Is it worth it? But keep in mind that if you look at it today and you say, I could save $5,000, but it'll cost me 20 grand to track it. No, don't do it.
Yeah.
A year from now with AI, maybe you could still save $5,000, but it costs you $300 to track it. Like that's what's going to transform the way business is done in logistics and transportation.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple questions that came in. Before I get that, Moneyball, that was Billy Bean. I love that movie. John, do you think the biggest resistance for TSPs to utilize technology is a lack of knowledge or security concerns, specifically with the increase of phishing for the information of their business?
I think from experience, phishing and security is a real concern, but I don't think it even gets on the radar of most TSPs. I think lack of knowledge is an impediment. I think for your typical TSP, though, it's lack of time.
Mm-hmm.
Every TSP has burning issues they have to deal with right now. FedEx is on the phone. Driver broke down. Somebody just got sick. Somebody just quit. And so we all know how it's like to be interrupt driven. The knowledge problem is about setting aside some time to chat with people and poke around and experiment and learn it and get comfortable. And that's a luxury very few TSPs have, right? But the thing is, it's just there beyond their visual horizon because they probably have someone on their management team who knows this stuff, but they hired them to be a senior driver and a fleet manager. And they never said, hey, why don't you take the lead on looking into what we could do with technology? Or there might be that 16-year-old kid that your child babysat, who's now a total nerd, who's on the chess team, who would love to come in for $8-10 an hour or $15 an hour and help you out, and would be a world of knowledge and would sit there not caring that you've just been interrupted 7 times in an hour by the terminal. That could come do that for you. Or it could that you could hire someone offshore who's got these skills for $5 an hour who could do it all for you full time.
Yeah, you know, and I think generation is really a difference between those that are willing to change or take the risk or understand it. You know, those that have been, you know, in this case FedEx 20, 30, or even in the industry 20, 30 years, they're so used to how things have been done, unwilling to change or maybe even have the fear. And the youth today that's making up, you know, the growth. Are used to that. They've been changing. It seems like every year their age changes and technology changes along with it. And so there's just being a lot more familiar for sure.
Fun story. I'm working on Wall Street. I've got to send something to the New York Stock Exchange. I can't send it to them except by fax. There's a young guy on my team, wicked smart, knows his way around a computer. His fingers fly on the keyboard, all this crazy stuff. I learned from him, and I said, Alan, send it over the New York Stock Exchange for me. It's urgent. And he stands there looking at me. I said, Alan, it's urgent. He goes, what's a fax? I suddenly realized I was the old guy in the room.
Yeah.
And he said to me, why don't you just scan it and email it to them? When I explained what a fax was, he said, that's so stupid. And I said, well, you are right. The New York Stock Exchange can't receive it via email.
Yeah.
Shades of FedEx, right? But your point's absolutely right. Like generationally, we're slow to adopt the newest things that came out because the younger people are playing with them all the time. They were in school and they had time to do this. So leverage that. Figure out how to take advantage of those people to do it for you. You don't know how to do taxes. You hire an accountant. Why would it be different to think that someone on your team could figure this out and implement it? It's not going to
Right.
destroy your business.
Right, absolutely. Okay, Dakota, second question is, with FedEx 2.0 coming out in the near future, do you think TSPs will be more open to other technology systems that they weren't interested in today? And what might some of those be?
So I may be misunderstanding the question, because my impression of FedEx 2.0 is that they're trying to consolidate on the line haul side to have ground start to move a lot of trailers for express. And as a result of that, FedEx is probably going to have to make a lot of changes to their existing technology systems. But they're not the gold standard that you want to hold yourself to. I mean, they've got a very old TMS that they have to deal with. They've made strides with the Trip Buddy, the dispatching, but I don't know how 2.0 is really going to affect technology adoption.
Yeah, and I think it's probably more around, so FedEx, it's not express given the ground, it's a combination of the operations to become one. And it's just going to change the amount of volume that will come onto ground than what they have today, based on tightening the network, but still meeting the service expectations. And I think what Dakota is asking is, through growth, through, multiple locations, through innovation, what could be some of that technology that's out there that's going to allow them to adapt and grow to meet that growth expectation?
For the TSP or for FedEx?
For TSPs.
Well, I go back to a story I heard 3 years ago where somebody during the COVID boom who had been operating under one terminal got a call from another terminal 400 miles away who said, your manager spoke volumes about you. We're growing like gangbusters. Can you add 6 trucks? And they figured out how to get the equipment and how to find the drivers. And they struggled to keep that as part of their operation because they never worked in a distributed way, in a remote way. It was a real struggle, and they almost lost the runs because of performance issues, because everything was a hot mess, because all of their systems they designed were designed with the assumption that everybody was in one terminal and the office was 2 miles away and the owner can put his hands on paper and bring things and that kind of stuff. So I know it sounds really basic, but this stuff happens. So from a technology standpoint, I think having your house in order so that when those opportunities come from Network 2.0, that's the most important thing on the technology side, so that you don't waste a moment thinking about getting more runs, having more drivers. Because I'll tell you, if you have 7 trucks today and your phone's blowing up, 20 trucks is unmanageable. You just can't do it, right? And so you got to think ahead, like, what would my world look like with more runs?
Right.
Can I deal with it? So there's no like silver bullet. It's not like AI is going to suddenly make everything perfect, but it is going to change things. I'm not sure where in this space. But my guess is there's already some very smart contractors, for example, just scanning their bills on truck repairs, and AI is putting it all into the MMRs for them. And we're working on trying to do that too, right?
Yeah. I think COVID is a perfect example of the growth potential that 2.0 offers to TSPs. And so you think about staying in front of your maintenance, you think about staying in front of being able to hire drivers, being safe, obviously, being able to get equipment. What are some of the technology capabilities? Because it's really about not just growing, it's about maintaining your profitability. It's about maintaining your safety scores. It's about maintaining your driver satisfaction so you don't have, unoccupied trucks not driving revenue.
There's a lot in there, in my opinion.
Right.
And it comes back to time, right? And we all fall into the trap of the way I'm doing it's just fine, right? But if you're spending 15 minutes a day doing something that should take a minute, and you're doing that 20 times a day, you don't have time to focus on the important stuff. And the important stuff is usually safety, team and culture, and working on the business, not in the business.
Right.
90% of TSPs suffer from it's good enough, but good enough for them means working 60, 70 hours a week, just getting shit done. And in a perfect world, you would look at, and I don't want to name names because maybe they don't want me telling, but there are TSPs with P&D and line haul operations that are really big, and they work. They'll tell you they work
Right.
10, 12 hours a week.
Yeah.
But they're thinking about their business and building relationships and planning for the future 40, 50 hours a week. And it's not interrupt driven because they've systematized everything and taken all the friction out of the work, leveraging technology and people and processes. That's where those folks get bigger because FedEx sees how smooth things run and how well they run and how safe they run. And that's who's the front of the line when they're giving away 5, 10 more runs. It's that simple.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect response. So Casey, let's circle back to you. Let's open it back up for any other questions. Do you want to go through the survey results? And then we'll
Yeah,
pull something together.
probably take a few more minutes for the survey results. We only have a couple submissions from the survey, so please, if you haven't taken the survey, go ahead and take a minute to submit that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we are open for questions. So we got another 8-10 minutes left in the meeting, and we wanted to reserve that for questions. Something I wanted to point out too, so I'm a big data guy as well, digital marketing person. And John mentioned a few apps that he uses for office operations. One app that I'm really a fanboy of is called Zoho One. So if you're just starting out and you want to kind of upgrade your BizTech office game, Zoho is an app that is basically 40 different apps, and it's like $37 a month. And I'm going to go ahead and chat out a link to all the apps that are included in the one user license. It's like 40, 45 apps. So if you're just starting out, you don't have much invested yet or time into a great CRM, finance software, email automation, marketing automation, this app kind of does it all. It's one app to rule them all, right?
Right.
So REL uses Zoho for a lot of our CRM needs, marketing needs. So I'm always in Zoho. It's easy to use. It's cloud-based. They provide free training. It's really quick and easy to get up and running with the CRM, which is kind of like the heart and soul of Zoho. And CRM, for those that don't know it, is customer relationship management. So it's a place where you keep all your customer data. And it's a way you kind of can use analytics to find out and segment your customer data. So it's really valuable for REL for a lot of companies. So I'd take a little look at it if you have some time. As I mentioned, I put it in a link to the app in chat. It has pricing information. It's cloud-based, simple to use. Give it a look.
Well, it's not one way either, Casey. It's dual. So we have our portal capabilities that our clients can go in and see the activity of the business, whether it's maintenance or their leasing, where they're standing in their lease, when their trucks expire, any type of detail that you could possibly find. So.
Yep, that's Z Portals. It's a Zoho product. But yeah, you can create a customer-facing portal or driver-facing portal where your employees or your customers can access their data that you can set up permissions to, right? Takes a little time to set up, but it's worth it, right? If you have a lot of phone calls coming in from customers or drivers, you can set this portal up where they can answer their own questions. It has chat functionality. You can create an AI chat feature, kind of pre-program answers for questions that always come in. It has a help desk feature. It's just, as you know, Tyler, I've been a fan of this tool for the last 8-10 years.
Great.
Casey, I love that one. And if I could throw one more that I think everybody should be paying attention to. Almost all TSPs I know at some point go from I'm the one who pays the bills to I don't have time to pay the bills. And the road forks, okay? And the one that a lot of people go down, which is horrifically scary to me, is, well, I've got someone on my team, he or she just pays the bills. That freaks me out because for 20 or $30 a month, you can go to something like bill.com or we're one of their many competitors, that he or she can scan the bills, put them in the accounting system, set them up for payment, but they don't have control of cash. You can come in 3 minutes a week and go, yes, 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 yes. Ooh, what's that? Click it, look at it. Oh yeah, that's right. That truck had a massive transmission issue. Yes, yes, yes. And then the money goes out. But if you read the trade stories and it's like every week, so-and-so was convicted of embezzling $1.2 million from their trucking company owner because they had control of the cash. Please, as a small business, with the amount of money that's going through there, I know you have good people, but you never know when a good person has a temptation because of a problem in their life. So keep control of your cash and leverage technology so that you never let go of that. They can't write a check or do other things, but you can pay electronically by going yes, 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 yes. That's a really big one for protecting your organization, like spam and phishing threats and other things.
No, it's great. Great advice.
Hey, Tyler, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
John, can you talk a little bit about the importance of staying ahead? So technology always seems to be a race, and people, your comments earlier were about when does somebody make that? When's the pain enough that somebody makes a decision to go away from Excel sheets into a system? I think we've taken the approach that said we're gonna invest early, and we're gonna stay ahead of it. And you've got TSPs who are right at that stage, opening up 5, 10 trucks. There's no need to go into a system yet. But to Dakota's earlier question about thinking on 2.0, when growth opportunities hit, if you're not prepped within your technology order, you're probably going to be way behind from the start. Can you talk a little bit about, there's this cost benefit analysis of over investing. Nobody wants to do that, but in growth markets, it's almost imperative to.
Well, okay, I'm going to answer it in two ways if I could, Pat. Number one, there's a seminal work from 25 years ago called Crossing the Chasm, and this author said there's a bell curve in any market of technology adoption. And the far end of the tail is what they call the early adopters or the innovators. Those are the nerds like me that want to see the newest, coolest thing and try it just for the sake of trying. And as you move towards the middle, you end up to this big group, which is the beyond the early adopters, the early majority, right? And then on the back half of the curve, you've got the late majority and then the ultimate laggards, the tail, okay? Be in the early majority. You do not have to be the person looking at every newest thing with new lights, bells, and whistles, but don't be the person today that still likes your 8-track cassette tapes, okay? Don't be that guy. But definitely be staying at least on the front half of technology adoption, okay? Now, as far as when to start adopting technology, on the safety technology, you can't run a truck without VETRs and FCAMs and ELDs. That's just a requirement, okay? And from my perspective, I think the stuff I talked about earlier, the building blocks, it's a requirement the day you start, right? Maybe even before you start, before your contract starts. When you sign it, you should have it. And the reason is this, Pat. Those basic blocks, it's like per user, and you don't even pay for the drivers. It's per user in your office. So if it's just you with 2 trucks, you're going to pay like $15 a month for Microsoft Office or Google Workspace. You're going to pay $42 a month for a Grasshopper phone system that lets you have a scheduling system so you can delegate calls late at night to your lead driver. And you're going to pay for software like mine. All of my competitors, it's per truck. So it's maybe $50, $60 a month to have one of these systems built for a TSP. So when you get all done, it's like a $150 a month spend. And a 2-truck business is, depending on solo or teams, a 500 or 1,000 or $1 million a year business. Like, why would you skip it?
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense to not do that. Did that answer your question, Pat? He's muted.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, good. Casey, how are we doing on our survey?
I went ahead and shared the results in chat. So if you open up your chat, you can look at the results. We did have 4 submissions, which is not bad. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick before we end the event. And one thing, I will be sending out a recording of the event along with the PowerPoint presentation and a link to those survey results. So be looking for that the next day after the session's over. 1 second, let me go ahead and share the results here.
Operational efficiency, unanimous.
And then
Spread
I'll
out.
just kind of slowly cruise down here and highlight the answers. And if anyone sees something they want to discuss a little bit, feel free to speak up. We do only have another minute left in the session. We can go over if need be, but I will be sending the link out to the survey results after this session.
I'm going to have to go soon, gentlemen, but Casey and Tyler, thank you so much for having me. I love
Thank
talking.
you, John.
Yeah, thanks, John. It was great having you on the call, and obviously we'll see you in Dallas here in the next month and a half, and we appreciate the time and expertise that you brought, and we thank everyone that joined us today. So have a great day, have a great weekend, and go REL.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.